A young American couple is traveling to Iceland on its scenic roads to begin a nice holiday together. Riley's girlfriend Janai is happy to pose for the photos that Riley is taking with an antique camera. They check into their hotel room and then leave for an Icelandic tour that includes stops at hot springs and active geysers. Over dinner, Riley assures Janai that he brought enough film and declines her offer to buy him a more contemporary camera when she questions whether they will be able to obtain film for such an old camera. He explains that he prefers to record the moment with all its flaws rather than having a machine automatically repair everything. Following that, they continue to see all the key tourist attractions, including a revered church and several breathtaking waterfalls. They go back to the hotel in the evening to rest, but Janai awakens in the middle of the night and glances out the window. She notices a dazzling light that briefly covered the sky before dissipating. The following morning, as the couple heads downstairs for breakfast, they discover that there is no one working and that the buffet is empty. Instead, they decide to eat breakfast at a cafe, but when they venture outside, they discover that it is as quiet and empty on the streets. They check the clock again to make sure it is not too early, wonder whether it is a particular holiday, and try to enter several buildings, but to no effect. It seems as though everyone in the city has vanished except for them. Panicked, they roam and search a little longer before giving up and acknowledging the truth: they are alone. In a state of agitation and desperation, Riley sees a car with a window open, and they utilize it to scan the city more thoroughly, but they still can't find anyone. They eventually travel all the way to the countryside without ever encountering anyone. Riley prompts Janai to attempt calling her mother once more in vain as she begins to question if the end of the world has already arrived. They try to take solace in the idea that they at least have each other when they finally lose up. When it gets dark, they head back to the hotel, and Janai is so worn out and furious that she snaps when Riley doesn't close the blinds the first time. The following morning, Janai is still cranky and won't get out of bed, so Riley wakes her up first and tries to wake her as well. When Riley returns after leaving her for a time, Janai asks him how they're going to go home, but Riley has no idea. Riley tries to create Janai's favorite gingerbread latte because she's still lonesome. Even though it's not particularly excellent, Janai respects the attempt. They then make the decision to rob the neighborhood grocery shop. Riley has switched into survival mode and is walking past carrying grocery carts full of items while Janai only has a few things in her hand out of habit. Riley then searches for a new vehicle with more space because they can now go wherever they want without being stopped. Riley takes their baggage when they go back to the hotel and says it's time for an upgrade, so the couple starts looking for a nice place to stay in. Riley settles in right away after they locate one they both like, but Janai can't help but question whether it really is this easy. They then visit a clothing shop. Janai once more begins to only grab one or two items, but Riley quickly reminds her of the circumstances, and the two of them try on a variety of ensembles without restriction, which adds some fun back into their life. While playing Monopoly and joking about, they also consume some booze. The following morning at breakfast, Riley asks Janai whether she believes in God and if everything happens according to his plan, and Janai wonders if they are being tested. Janai, however, responds that there is a difference between belief and faith. Riley comforts her by saying that they can do whatever they want right now because the world is their oyster. After that, as they travel through the countryside, Janai leans her feet on the window and allows the wind to carry her shoes off. They eventually arrive at the geothermal baths, where Riley spreads a cloth down so they can lie down and snuggle. Janai stands up and begins changing as she moves to the pool while Riley decides to take a nap. When Janai finally takes off her last accessory and jumps into the water, Riley observes this and follows her while he shoots photos. Riley is quick to imitate her, and soon the two are having sexual encounters in the pool. The two then have a snooze together, and after a while, Janai decides to go for a walk through the lovely fields before the other wakes up. He continues to take pictures of Riley looking stunning among the flowers as she awakens. They return to the city that evening, and when Riley was playing around in the grocery store like a child, he fell and wounded his arm. They decide to have a romantic meal that night, and they even get dressed up for it. Janai, on the other hand, can't stop thinking about what happened at the store and confronts Riley for his actions, warning him to be careful because there are no physicians or firefighters around to assist them in case of an emergency. Riley, on the other hand, feels Janai is being dramatic and just wants to keep having fun, which enrages Janai and makes her walk out. A little while later, Riley arrives at the house they claimed, finds Janai lying down in a foul mood, and proceeds through the deserted city carrying a bouquet. Riley says he will be more cautious going forward because he doesn't like seeing her in this situation. Janai then stands up and talks about her favorite book, lamenting the fact that she forgot to pack it for her trip. Riley proposes looking for another copy, but Janai only wants the one she has because it was a present from her father and it acted as a record of all the significant events in her life. For instance, she acknowledged her love for Riley for the first time in that novel. Riley beams, but adds that they already have everything they need in each other and the stunning surroundings. The remainder they can just construct. There is nothing they can do to make Janai go home, but she doesn't take it well and insists that she wants to. When the pair returns home from another adventure and a ton of fresh photos, Janai notices the water is no longer flowing from the faucet. Riley consumes blueberry yogurt, which starts a new dispute because that one doesn't expire first. They won't have an endless supply of food, Janai says, so he should be more careful with it. Riley says they can produce and hunt, but Janai laughs at the concept. Later, Riley swims in the pool by herself while Janai visits a church and discovers a statue with strange markings on it. In her need for a sign that will reveal the significance of everything, Janai can't help but communicate with it. The couple arrives at some hot springs after making another trek outside of the city. Riley declares his passion for Iceland and invites Janai to hear the pulse of the planet. When they eventually arrive at a beach with volcanic rocks, Riley tries to tell Janai a story about trolls, but she is cut short by Janai's reminder that they are without water. Riley takes numerous shots of the abandoned plane fuselage after they arrive there because he finds it to be lovely. Janai is disturbed by this and argues that it is simply useless rubbish that has outlived its function. She also screams that Riley cannot simply alter the environment to make her feel better. Riley becomes frustrated and asks Janai what to do, however, she only tells him to open his eyes before driving off, leaving Riley to sleep inside the aircraft. Janai spends that night dozing off in a remote car before heading back to the aircraft the next morning to see how Riley is doing. When he awakens, none of them speak. Instead, Janai quietly serves him a drink before they both head back to the city. Riley spends the remainder of the day exploring the city and photographing every piece of public art and graffiti that he can. He is so horrified by a particular piece of art with eerie eyes that he throws his film into the trash. While this is going on, Janai kills time by browsing through her laptop, checking for notifications, and making futile attempts to contact others. Riley starts visiting several places to start gathering parts for a project he has in mind while Janai decides to go to church to pray afterwards. When he enters the elevator, the doors abruptly close, startling him, making him momentarily believe he is trapped inside. Thankfully, the doors quickly reopen on their own, allowing Riley to return home. When he gets there, he doesn't see Janai anywhere, so he occupies himself by creating devices. Since this is the only new sign of life Janai has seen in a long, she is feeding a horse and taking pleasure in their presence. Later, when the pair is traveling once more, Janai listens to previous voicemails while driving to recall the voices of her family and friends. They got out of the automobile and walk about after passing by some glaciers. The two of them then sat together on a glacier while Janai discusses the natural force that periodically purges the earth, suggesting that perhaps God grew impatient. Riley, however, believes that their relationship's future is uncertain and he will not give up on it. Later, when the couple is back in the city, Janai locates a facility to develop the photos. She also discovers a flower shop, but her joy rapidly fades as she sees that every bloom is dead. Riley persuades her to search for flowers elsewhere by arguing that they require a change of scenery. They eventually reach a lakeside cabin, where they wish to utilize the fireplace. Riley decides to grab some wood, and when he gets close to the forest, he is horrified to see another person there named Nils. The pair promptly shares their supplies with the man because he doesn't seem to be doing well before bringing him inside. Nils affirms that he hasn't seen anyone else either and that he left the city following the incident because he wants to be in this location if the world ends. Riley encourages Nils to stay with them while he is coughing violently during their conversation. No matter what they say, Nils appears to have accepted his fate, which irks Riley. Janai is also happy that they found him. Janai tells Nils about their trip and how much she misses home later, in the middle of the night, while Riley is sleeping in front of the fireplace. In exchange, Nils tells him about his own family, who he now considers strangers due to the fact that he has lived his whole life at sea. He also makes reference to the Welsh word hiraeth, which denotes sorrow over a home that has passed away or never existed. Nils feels that everything is fundamentally pointless, while Janai believes that God has abandoned them. The following morning, Riley wakes Janai and informs her that Nils passed away while he was sleeping. Riley goes outside to begin digging a hole to bury him as Janai goes to see for herself. When Janai emerges, she declares that she does not see the purpose of burying Nils, igniting yet another debate over whether they should prioritize finding more people or surviving. Riley claims that they had already done enough searching, but Janai questions how thoroughly they had looked. When they get back to the city, Janai gets some duct tape and starts using it to identify abandoned buildings. Riley follows her and urges her to return home while pointing out that this is marking the dead rather than locating the living. But according to Janai, this place is not a home. Another fight follows, and Riley believes it's worthless because they can't alter anything anyway, even though he can sense Janai is seeking divine explanations. He attempts to persuade Janai that they can still have a happy life together, but she acknowledges that she has lost all concept of what that is. Before he tries again with Janai, Riley completes erecting a windmill later. He takes her to a river and asks her to think back to the glacier they were sitting on, telling her that this river was formed by the water that melted from that glacier. He wants to make Janai aware of how difficult life is, and in doing so, he succeeds in making them embrace and kiss one another. They eventually share the last of their water at dinner. Janai receives an email on her laptop as she's doing the dishes, and she immediately hurries to check it out in obvious delight. But when she opens it, she sees that Riley has just sent her a snapshot. When Janai realizes there is no one else, she sobs in frustration and disappointment. Riley discovers a huge white envelope bearing his name the following morning. He turns on the homemade water pump and looks inside the envelope to find the developed pictures. He becomes anxious upon observing Janai's face on them, however, and runs outside to search the city for her. When he finally locates Janai's car parked adjacent to the geothermal pool, he is horrified to discover Janai's body floating in the water. It appears that she ended things for herself since she was unable to handle the circumstances any longer. Riley dives into the water and pulls Jeannie out, but he is helpless. Then he makes an attempt to emulate her, but his survival instincts prevent him from succeeding. Riley sobs uncontrollably and clings to Janai's body afterward. He makes the decision to leave Janai behind once he has cooled down. Riley gets back in his car and begins to leave, unsure of what will happen to him now that he is truly alone.